Welcome to Conversations with Big Rich. This is an interview-style podcast. These interviewed are all involved in the off-road industry. Being involved, like all of my guests are, is a lifestyle, not just a job. I talk to past, present, and future legends, as well as business owners, employees, media, and land use warriors. Men and women who have found their way into this exciting and addictive lifestyle we call off-road. We discuss their personal history, struggles, successes, and reboots. We dive into what drives them to stay active in off-road. We all hope to shed some light on how to find a path into this world that we live and love and call off-road.
Whether you're crawling the Red Rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Have you seen 4Low magazine yet? 4Low magazine is a high-quality, well-written, four-wheel drive-focused magazine for the enthusiast market. If you still love the idea of a printed magazine, something to save and read at any time, 4Low is the magazine for you. 4Low cannot be found in stores, but you can have it delivered to your home or place of business. Visit 4lowmagazine.com to order your subscription today. On today's episode of Conversations with Big Rich, we have Chris May. Chris is an old-time rock crawler. I first met him, I think, back in the EROC days out in Jellicoe, Tennessee. Maybe New Rock, but I think it was EROC. And then he competed with us at UROC, and I know Ultra 4 and KOH. But we're going to talk about all the other things that happened in between and what got Chris to where he is at now. Hey, Chris, thank you for coming on board and taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for reaching out. I'm glad we could make this happen. Good chatting with you. I haven't talked with you in a while, so this will be good to catch up.
Yeah, it is. It's that's one thing I'm really loving about this podcast is it gives me a chance to catch up with people I haven't had a chance to see or talk to. So I'm excited. So let's jump right in. And where were you born and raised?
So I was actually born in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, but we kind of lived all over Florida. My parents kind of just, we lived in Jacksonville and Pompano Beach, kind of all around Florida till I was about 12. And then I moved to where I live now in South Carolina. So I kind of was born in Florida, but pretty much raised in South Carolina.
What did your parents do that kept them bouncing around?
Well, nothing. I mean, nothing good, like no Army stories or anything like that. My dad was in the Army for just a short stint, but really my dad just worked on cars. My mom waited tables, and my dad actually wanted to become a firefighter, so I moved to Jacksonville. And trying to think how old I was. I don't even know the years. I was young, maybe 8. And actually, the last day of training for him to become a firefighter for the city of Jacksonville, the training building blew up, caught on fire. It kind of really messed him up for a while. I mean, he stayed, skin grass really bad.
Oh wow!
And so we kind of lived in Florida for a little while there, but that's kind of when my dad was like, I just need to change the scenery, change everything. And we moved to South Carolina. So I kind of been here since I was about 12.
Yeah, I would imagine that was pretty traumatic, going through training to be a firefighter and then having something like that happen to where you get injured before you're full blown into it.
Yeah, and there was a mess because it messed him up, and there were some lawsuits involved with it and everything. And I don't think he come out too good on the end of things. But anyways, it moved me to South Carolina, and man, I think back about what I'd be doing if I grew up in Florida versus where I grew up here in South Carolina. I'm sure it would be totally different because
right.
I mean, Broward County, you can only imagine. People, Broward County is way different than the backwoods of South Carolina. So
well, and Broward County is one of those that you used to see on Cops all the time.
Yes, that's yeah. So I moved to South Carolina in '92. So yeah, the early, late '80s, early '90s. It was. I mean, there was definitely gangs and all that. I remember that in middle school and stuff. So it was totally different than South Carolina.
Well, I'm glad that happened. I was going to ask, but if you're bouncing around and stuff, was it hard for you to make friends? Or were you in an area each time where you in a spot long enough to where you were able to make friends?
So I remember some friends, but I don't remember much. I mean, I was 12 when I moved to South Carolina, but my wife can tell you every teacher she ever had, everything. I, on the other hand, I don't remember a lot of that. So, I mean, I kind of don't. I had friends, and I always was out, in Florida. Man, I rollerbladed, rode my bike, skateboard. I never had any dirt bikes, or I think my dad bought a dirt bike one time, but we didn't keep it long, and we lived in, just cities and everything, and it was, I always wanted something with a motor, never got it. So
When did how did that love for motors come about? Is it just something that happened, or can you remember an instance?
Well, my dad was an auto mechanic, and he always had trucks and everything, but it wasn't like I don't remember always. I do remember hanging out at some of my dad's friends' shops and everything, but I didn't really. My dad had some 4-wheel drives, but we never really went. My dad being an auto mechanic really wasn't what drove me to love vehicles, but I guess maybe it steered me. I really, in high school, I moved to South Carolina, started going to school up here and everything, and then high school came around, and I've heard other people talk about how they offered different things. It was like, shop class or agriculture or band. Well, my high school actually had an automotive. And when I joined it, my dad was like, "Oh, you do not want to work on cars. That's a bad profession or whatnot." But I joined it, and really that meeting people in that class is what propelled me into liking things. So I guess I'll keep talking. So in that automotive class, I started in 9th grade, but then you stayed in that automotive class forever. Like my senior year, I think I went to maybe one other class, and I went to automotive school or automotive class the rest of the time. And it was right on our high school campus. But I met basically a lifelong friend, to this day, still a good friend, and the guy that got me into four-wheeling, and it's a name people know, is Drew Goldie. I met Drew Goldie in that automotive class.
I was going to ask that question, so I'm glad you brought it up.
Yep. So we met in automotive class, and so going back to, man, I begged my parents for a dirt bike or a go-kart, never got it. And when I got my first vehicle, which was an 87 Ford Ranger 2-wheel drive, I was just really kind of hell on wheels. I broke it all the time, just always tearing it up. So,
but you were in auto shop, so you could fix it.
I was in auto shop, so I could fix it, but it was only 2-wheel drive. So going back to meeting Drew was in this automotive class with me, and he had an 89 Ford Ranger, but it was 4-wheel drive. So he was all the time talking about this was like 96, 97. I graduated in 2000. He, around here in these parts, we had a lot of gravel roads. There was some decent four-wheeling. I mean, back then 32s were huge. So he would always talk about four-wheeling. And I was like, man, I want to go. And I even went in my 2-wheel drive truck with him a couple times, but I wound up trading my 87 2-wheel drive Ranger on an 87 4-wheel drive Ranger. And man, we just, being in automotive class together, we actually had a few other buddies. It was like a Ford Ranger club. We had nothing but Ford Rangers and pretty much went four-wheeling all the time. Very
good. And what about your other classes? Was there anything else that interested you at all?
Man, no. I played a lot of sports in Florida. I liked football, but I mean, I'm like 5'8", maybe 160 pounds, and I'm not that fast of a runner. I loved baseball. I love sports, but I really wasn't that good. When I got to high school, you trying out, I was never really even good. But when I got to high school, once I got a vehicle, I didn't care about anything. I didn't go to football games. I didn't party much. I was probably working on a vehicle or four-wheeling the whole time.
Wow. Okay. From that, if you're working on your car all the time, you've got to be able to buy parts. So what created that the income or the finances to be able to work on it?
So finances were slim. I mean, like I said, my dad was a mechanic. My mom, she waited tables. We didn't have a whole lot of money, but it was funny. My parents, they didn't even have that nice of cars. Like my dad would fix his car to drive it and just pray it didn't break. Well, I would fix it just to go break it on the weekends. And my dad hated it. Like putting a lift on a vehicle was just frowned upon. Big tires. Why are you wearing it out? Insurance is more expensive. But no, I did some odd and end jobs like cooking at a restaurant, this and that while I was in high school.
What kind of
But
restaurant?
then it was actually an Irish pub.
Oh, really?
In town here in Anderson, South Carolina. And I just cooked, I don't know, I started washing dishes, then cooked some. And, that really, the bad part about that is you had to work in a restaurant. You got to work on Friday and Saturday night. So it's a busy night. So that was the night everybody wanted to go four wheeling and, hang out. So I didn't much like working there.
So what happened after the restaurant?
Well, so back to automotive class, friends in the automotive class, our teacher, his name was Ken McKinney. And man, he was like the best automotive teacher, knew everybody in the community. When you graduate, a lot of his graduates would go work, at the Ford dealership or the Chevrolet place, this and that. Well, to work at a dealership, you had to be 18. And I can't remember, I wasn't quite 18, but another guy had went to work at Walmart, changing oil and tires. Them little, they call them like tire lube expresses or something.
Yeah.
Well, the restaurant business, I was making like $5 or $6 an hour. The Walmart was going to pay me, I think it was like $10 an hour to come change oil. So a friend in the automotive class got me on at Walmart, and I was like, oh, I'm going to work here like one summer. I wound up working at Walmart all through college in that automotive thing. And it was really a good, really fun job. They had like benefits and all kind of crazy stuff that I never even cared about, but Walmart was actually a good place to work there, kind of late 90s, early 2000s.
I can't say that I've ever heard anybody that said that. So that's good that you had that experience.
Well, I will say, so a funny story about Walmart, like if anybody's listening, like don't ever take your vehicle to a Walmart. We tore up so many vehicles. I can't tell you how many cars we blew up or tires that fell off. You had a bunch of young guys in there. They weren't making $10 an hour. We were all goofing around. It was a fun place to work, but we definitely tore some cars up. So
Luckily they had insurance, huh?
Yeah.
I managed a couple of lube and tune-up stores for different companies. And one of the things that I found is that getting the new employees changed, and typically they were fresh out of high school, and just trying to remind them that, hey, you've got to put the oil drain plug back in. You have to tighten, you have to put the filter on after you've taken one off, and you have to put it on and make sure it's, sealed correctly, lube the seal first, all the little tiny steps that are just like common sense to try to get them to remember to do that.
Well, it's funny you said that about the lube store. So I got to back up because I forgot. So after the automotive class, that's what it was. You had to be 18 to work at Walmart. The auto mechanic teacher got me a job it was called Precision Tune Auto Care or something. It was one of them little tune-up places.
Right. So
funny story. I'm working there changing oil. I'm 17. And I say I've been working on cars a lot, but I don't know how to work on nothing. I'm good at tearing stuff up. Is all I'm really good at. Well, I don't know what it is about Ford Rangers, but this story, so they had the pit. You pull the cars over the pit,
Right.
The guy, it was like one of the first times he could let me do one by myself. I remember it was like a 91 Ford Ranger, little two-wheel drive truck. I pulled it in to change the oil. I crawled down the stairs. And when I got underneath there, I was about to take the drain plug out. Well, the back tire was hanging on the lip of the pit. It was about to fall in. I was like panicked. I was like, oh gosh. So I ran back up there, jumped in the car, and I cut the wheels all the way to the driver's side to back up to get the back tire off the lip. And I drove the front tire into the pit.
Oh, Jesus.
And it threw me in the passenger seat. The truck went kind of down to the pit. They had to call a wrecker service to get it out of the pit, tore the man's truck up. So yeah, that was, which I didn't lose my job, but that working at that little that precision tune place real quick, I didn't want to become a mechanic. The guys there, they worked hard. I don't know, they didn't make the best money. And so that's when I basically went to Walmart and started changing oil there.
Right.
So.
And 4 years there, did you just stay an oil change mechanic, or did you move up? Did you become into like a shift leader or something like that?
No, so so the reason I went to Walmart too was, they're open till like, I think it was like 9 o'clock at night or something. Well, after high school, I did go to college. Um, Same thing. We had a friend from that automotive class. He actually, I don't know if he was in the automotive class or not, but I had a good friend that was a state trooper. His name was Eric Dickard. He actually was a spotter for Drew Goldie back in the rock crawling days. But
Okay.
I thought I wanted to become a cop. So I went to college for criminal justice. And so I was working at Walmart changing oil. At night I would go to change oil at Walmart, but during the day I was going to this little community college. And the classes they kind of sucked. I mean, it was kind of law stuff. There was cops in the class, and then I don't know. I guess I just got older and realized that a profession of being a cop that's a tough job too. And you're definitely not going to get rich being a cop.
No.
So
unless you're one of those that are that you see in the movies that is the bad cops.
Well, yeah. So, but no, I did have a grandfather that was like big into electronics. He had electrical engineering, and he pushed me to electronics. And so I changed majors, and I went to that same community college for electrical engineering, a little 2-year program. And I didn't like electronics. I mean, I really didn't like it, but I was like, I don't know, got to get a degree. So I worked at Walmart the whole time, and I got a 2-year degree in electrical engineering, and graduated college. Now, meanwhile, I'm four wheeling all the time, and all my money's going to four wheeling. Actually, got some tuition money to buy books, this and that. I was not buying books for classes, using the money to buy off-road parts. I mean, anything I could do to get off-road parts was, that's how it went. So,
do you wish you hadn't spent it that way now, or are you glad you did?
Well, so I wouldn't change anything. I mean, I wish I'd have got the job I have now straight out of college. It's funny. I had that Ford Ranger, and me and Drew Goldie actually, we actually roommated together. We got a house at high school. We moved in together, which was probably the worst thing, because now all we did is full wheel, work on trucks all the time. And this is back when Teleco was huge. I don't know if you ever got a chance to go to the old Teleco.
No, I did not.
You see all the videos of, I don't know, that guy that made Rick Russell, or I don't know, he made all the videos. Well, we went to Teleco. It was 120 miles from my house, maybe 3-hour drive. So we were going to Teleco a good bit, but I had a Ford Ranger with a Dana 28 TTB, and I decided to weld the front end up one time. And of course, it destroyed the whole front end, instantly.
Right.
At Teleco. But going to Teleco back in the old days, I kept seeing all these Toyotas. So that's kind of where I came home, sold my Ranger, and I bought a 1983 Toyota pickup truck. And that's when it really it started snowballing from there. It really took off. That's when I was buying them parts, dual cases, and bought every Longfield and Belfield they made back in the early days. So
nice. And was Drew still in doing the Ford thing, or did he move over to Toyota as well?
No. So Drew he put like a 9-inch. That was a big thing. Getting a 9-inch in a Ranger was a big deal. I think he had like a Dana 35. It was a little stronger in the front end, but when I got the Toyota, I feel like I started, it was like, man, the Toyota was doing better than his Ranger. Well, his dad actually had a Jeep Cherokee. So he got this Cherokee, and then he started building the Cherokee, which was, I had the straight axles, had a little bit more power. So he started messing with the Cherokee and putting bigger axles in it and everything. And then I had the Toyota. And, from there, like some of the first early events I did was, you remember them 4-wheel drive jamborees? I can't think of the company that put them on. They were out of like Pennsylvania, maybe.
Sports in the Rough?
No, this was like jamborees. Anyways,
okay,
they were
yes.
they were really popular. Everybody had the lifted up trucks and
Family
all that.
events.
Well, yeah, that's what it was.
Yep,
It was family events. One of them came to our hometown here in Anderson, South Carolina. Well, they had a Tuff Truck and the mud drags, and I was like, we entered it, and we were. I mean, our vehicles kind of sucked, but yeah, we entered one of them, did the Tuff Trucks and the Toyota, and just met a lot of people. But that same event came to our same town, and they put a rock crawl on one time, and Clemson Full Wheel Center put this rock crawl on, and all these guys showed up. Chris Durham, Ken Shoup, I think Matt Dees was there. There was just a lot of old school rock crawl guys. Well, they weren't old school back then. They was brand new.
Right.
And, met a few of those guys. And,
that got the blood flowing for rock crawling.
that's right.
So let me ask this question, since I haven't been able to get Shoup on. Was Shoup still wearing his boy toy shorts?
So what's funny, back then, I'm trying to think of the year. This might have been 2000. This might have been 99, 2000, 2001 is like the 3 years it came to our hometown, maybe.
Okay.
And I really didn't even know who he was then. I didn't know who any of them guys were. They really, because I guess we were more into the mud, and all we would do is find construction sites. We'd find sewer trails. We're probably doing a lot of trespassing, to go full wheeling. There were a few spots, definitely a few spots, but getting in the Toyota, I kind of, we were driving everywhere. I didn't have no tow rigs. I was driving everywhere. The mud was tearing everything up. But I do remember we started going. I mentioned Tellico. Started going to Tellico, but there was another event that I think the place was called Iron Man 4-Wheel Drive. And they were from maybe Pickens or something, South Carolina. They put an event on at a speedway here, and it was the first time that I really saw rock crawling. Like, I remember Chris Durham was there in a brand new Jeep that he built, and it had front dig. It was like, I'd never even seen this, didn't know what it was, but the course they built was like a little bitty thing, and he could just spin around, So that's when that event right there, it's like a Great American Motor Fair is what it was. 2001 really opened my eyes up to like, man, this is super cool. But so Chris Durham had that brand new Jeep. He kind of showed it off. Well, there was rumors of this guy showing up in this new rig also. I didn't know who it was, but Ken Shoup showed up to that event in his brand new, coilovers and links. Chris Durham still had leaf springs. And that rig that I'm talking about, I think is the one that, Ken went on to win all kinds of crazy stuff. But it was kind of cool that he debuted it there at that little backyard rock crawl event. But that's when it really, I actually met Chris Durham and I talked to him, and he was like, hey man, you ever hear of Jellicoe? I'm like, oh yeah, we go to Tellico all the time. He's like, no, Jellicoe. And then that's, I think we went and watched one event. And then after that, I went and competed.
And you competed in the Toyota to begin with?
Yeah, I had that 83 Toyota. I say competed. It had 35s. It had a beat up cage. And the crazy thing was, again, I'm still in college, scraping by, didn't even have a tow rig. Drew didn't have a tow rig either. Drew's dad actually I think he had an Expedition at the time. And me and Drew went in together, bought a trailer. Drew was my spotter. But yeah, so we went to Jellicoe. I had a Toyota on 35s with a roll cage, some dual cases and some stuff, but it was all leaf spring, nothing cool. And went up there and competed in one of them first ECORS events.
And what was that like when you saw everybody there? Because those were pretty good size events.
Oh, that's the thing. So I can't remember if we even went and watched. I think we might have just showed up and competed that first time. I mean, had no clue. That was back when, so Chris Durham and Ken Shoup were obviously like the top guys. Jeff Rowland, is that name ring?
Yep.
Is that the guy?
Yep.
He had like the ultimate Toyota buggy, and then Matt Dees was there. I remember them guys, but we were way out of our element. I mean, I think we did good. I don't even remember what happened. I probably broke a dang Burfield, to be honest with you. That was like the downfall of the Toyotas in the very, very early days. Because, being in South Carolina, we didn't have, you didn't learn about a lot of stuff till later on. So,
How long did you compete at EROC? How many years do you think?
so, I go back and think about this all the time. That was probably 2002 or three. And I swear, I don't know if I don't know if I've ever missed an event. I mean, I've missed some, but ever since that first event, I have been hooked. I mean, hooked hard. So, but you hear a lot of people talking about fabrication and working on stuff. Man, I was, from the stories I told, you could tell I wasn't the best at working on stuff. I could get by. I'd done some, dual cases, and I did some third member setups. I was just getting started in this stuff. But we met a guy, and I'm bringing his name up because he's Drew Goldie and this guy named Tommy Glenn. People that go back with me know Tommy Glenn is who really started everything off-road for me, like hardcore, because me and Drew we didn't even own a welder. We didn't have a shop. We were working in, driveway. But we met this guy, Tommy Glenn, who his parents had a muffler shop. So, this guy had been bending tubes since he was like 13. And man, he could build anything or do anything, especially back in those days. And he got into it with us. I don't know why. He never competed himself because he had kids and everything, but man, he loved helping me and Drew, build our cars, watch us go to these events and get better.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great when you can find somebody like that.
Yeah, well, and it really sucks. That guy built every one of my chassis I'd ever raced, all the way up to Ultra 4 stuff now. But he actually just passed away. He was like 49. He had a heart attack. So kind of, never know when it's your time. So you got to live it up while you're here for sure. So
I agree with that. That. Don't sit on your laurels and wait for things to happen. Go out and grab them. Do it.
Right. Well, and that goes back to would I have changed anything? Man, I have spent so much money four wheeling, and I didn't have any money, so it wasn't like I was spending a lot, but it was spending everything I had. So another funny thing. So I was talking about we didn't own a tow rig. Drew was into it just as much as I was, but he wasn't quite ready to build a car yet. Which Tommy built me a roll cage, put my Toyota. But then he built me a chassis, and our first real sponsor was Drew's dad. Drew's dad has a company. It's like environmental engineering. So it didn't really, rock crawling wasn't quite a good fit for environmental stuff, but he gave basically me and Drew, we upgraded the Expedition to an Excursion. He gave Drew an Excursion and a gas card, and me and Drew bought a 2-car trailer, and we went to every event. I don't think we missed many events from, early 2000s to 2008. We were at all the East Coast events. We might not have been doing very well because we didn't have a lot of money, but we were there. So
and you were learning.
Yeah, learning a ton. Well, what I was learning is I got to start making some money. That's what I was learning. It was like, man, it was something. Somebody always had something new, and stuff was just crazy expensive. And the only thing we had going for us, we had a gas card, we had a tow rig, and then Tommy was charging us pennies on the dollar to do work. I mean, he just enjoyed helping us out and watching us go to these events and do decent for what we had. We were competing against, some really talented people that had a lot of skill and money. So I feel like we held our own there.
So when did that need for money equate into doing more what you're doing now, work-wise?
Well, so that's another thing. Rock crawler, I mean, four-wheeling and rock crawling have kind of played my life out for me. So I'm working at Walmart, now, that's not making any money at all. I got a college degree. I graduated from college. I got this electrical engineering degree thing. I don't have a clue what I want to do. So another friend from that automotive class, I go back to automotive class. I worked with this guy at Walmart. I don't remember. We were just talking buddies. He had a Toyota at the time too. We'd four-wheel some. He said, "Hey man, I got this job." He said, "I'm installing underground power and I only work 4 days a week. He said, man, I work Monday through Thursday. I'm off every Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Well, I had never been, cooking, working at Walmart. You always work nights and weekends. And he basically was like, yeah, they'll pay you $15 an hour. He's like, you pretty much start tomorrow if you want to. I was like, dude, you tell me I'm going to be off every Friday, Saturday, Sunday. He's like, yeah. I said, dude, sign me up. I can go to all the events. And so really that got me into the utility business of installing underground power for Pike Electric. And that was actually decent money, nothing crazy, but I worked my way up to, being a foreman on the underground, and then I got into doing overhead work, that actually paid pretty good money. It was pretty dangerous, but that was another, working on the power lines. It never failed. That's now, so rock crawling, I was off every weekend doing the underground stuff, but I went to the overhead work. Then you had to work all these storms. I was making a bunch of money, but then I couldn't get off to go to some of the events.
Right, especially during storms. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It was like, man, if the wind blew or a hurricane came through or an ice storm, you might as well forget any competitions for a month. And so yeah, that put a damper on things. But I had this college degree, and I was a contractor for the local utility here. And I was like, man, they make more money doing the same thing, so I got a job. Actually, I tried to become a lineman for the local utility, and it just wouldn't work out. I couldn't get a job with them. So I had this degree, and I applied for this. It was a different job called relaying. You still work in the substations, but it had more to do with electronics and everything. And I lucked up and got that job, and that's what I do. That's what I do now. I actually work in substations, kind of on computer systems, kind of monitoring the power lines, and that's really been doing that for about 12 years. And it's an awesome job, a good company. I work for Duke Energy, and it's,
so you don't have to go climb poles anymore.
I don't have to climb poles anymore. I don't have to deal with storms anymore. And, we have outages and stuff. We work, if power goes out, big power outages, like the whole city goes out, we'll go out there and do stuff, but it's a lot. Well, being a lineman, I think there's a lot of guys probably listening to this that may be some linemen. Man, I wasn't 30 years old. I was late 20s, and man, I was just wore out after a day of work. Like, the last thing I want to do is go work on my stuff in the shop. So it was kind of like, man, do I want to do this the rest of my life? So that was another thing. I was like, I got to do something a little easier so I could, have energy to go work after work and everything. So
when you were competing there, EROC especially, what were some of the things that you remember? Because they did all their events at Jellicoe. Is that correct?
EROC did, yes.
EROC, yes.
Yep. So, man, I've got so many memories, and we're only going to talk for maybe an hour or so, but man, some of the cool things in the beginning of rock crawling for me was, well, one, everybody that was doing good lived like within an hour of me, like Chris Durham, Ken Shoup, Buddy Carlton, Mike Cole, Brad Stiles, Matt Dees. He didn't live too much farther. It was like, man, these guys right here, we all lived right there. But that was obviously EROC. They were more local. But, as the sport grew, those guys were still kicking butt at major events. But EROC didn't last. I don't know. All my dates are messed up year-wise. I wish I could remember them. I don't know why I can't, but they all run together. But EROC didn't last too long, and I feel like it turned into UROC maybe 1 or 2 seasons in.
Yeah, they got absorbed by UROC.
That's right.
That's when UROC was going on their growth thing. They were going to take over the world of rock crawling and change the world, make rock crawling household, like WWE or monster truck racing, all that kind of stuff. And they tried to get everybody under one umbrella, and it kind of created, I think, some problems.
And that's it. I remember, so this is one memory I have. I remember that whole thing, but when I really was like, man, this rock crawling is huge. I remember it was Jellicoe, the place was insane. It was like East and West all met at Jellicoe, and ESPN was there. They had like a show like Speed Sport. You remember the guy would come with the headset, and I remember John Bundrant came and Shannon Campbell was there, and that to me it was like that was the peak almost. That was one of the peaks of East Coast rock crawling. Was that event? Don't remember what year, but I just remember it being huge. I mean, like just insane, people everywhere.
Right.
So, but that was still when Unlimited was like the class, moon buggies. I was in the pro mod class. I don't even remember if it was pro mod. I might have been in the stock class back then. I might have had 37, so I was in the pro mod class back then.
I think they called it Legends at UROC.
That's right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, at UROC we coined the name pro mod, and
okay, that's right.
We went mod stock, then pro mod, and then unlimited, and they had, I don't remember if they had a stock class, but they had they had what they called Legends and then unlimited, right? And
yeah,
so
and then that's
go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that led to, I think we went to Jellicoe a bunch, but then somehow or another we branched out and heard about like New Rock. So we went to an event in Pennsylvania, and about the time we went to New Rock, that's when I first heard the term. It was like everything was a rock. You had E-Rock, you had U-Rock, there was New Rock, and then it was like, oh wait, there's this new one, We Rock. And I'm like, dang, how many events or how many series are we going to have? And I wish I could remember the first true We Rock event I went to, but I don't remember where it was. I really don't.
Yeah, I think
so.
we had done Jellicoe under the name. Well, we started off with Cal Rocks in California. Then we expanded that, and people were going, well, why would I compete at a Cal Rocks event when I'm in Texas or I'm, in Tennessee or I'm in New York or wherever? And it was like, well, okay, let's. And then that's when UROC was grabbing because it started off. UROC started off as the Utah Rock Crawling Off-Road Challenge.
That's right.
And when Craig Stump had it, and then, they did the super crawl, tried to get everybody to come to the super crawl, which was a great idea. Of course, none of the promoters wanted to, cross over and join that because then it devalued what they were doing, myself and the others. But UROC was putting it all together, so they called it the United. They changed it to United, and they started doing events. And then that's when we looked at it and said, okay, well, if you guys are going to get everybody in the U.S. together, I'm going to go outside of the U.S. And before I started UROC, I called all the other countries that I could think of and got hold of people because of Pirate. And we started an international sanctioning body using our rules. So we had, Australia, Mexico, Canada and a couple other countries that never actually put on events, but they were trying to. Right. And so that's why we called it UROC, the World Extreme. I figured, hey, the UROC guys want to call it United for the United States. That's great. They can have the United States. I'm taking the world. And then that's when
what year,
that's when we started banging heads.
Well, what year did you start coming to the East with UROC then?
Under the term UROC, it was 2005.
Okay.
But
I'm sure.
But we were there earlier with under Cal Rocks, and then I called it NARCA when ARCA was still in before they joined UROC. We called it NARCA, which was North American, the North American Rock Crawlers Association or something like that, which was regional. North American Regional Rock Crawlers Association.
That's right.
And I tried to, and that's where we went, and that's when I first went to Jellicoe. The very first New Rock event, me and Bob Rogie went out there and helped the Kyles get that event started, that series started. And of course that created a lot of butt hurt with the guys that were running E-Rock because they didn't like the idea of New Rock coming in. Everybody that started up a new series or anything was, all of a sudden was bad juju for everybody else, which wasn't really the case, but.
Well, and I've seen that, that almost happened again. It was kind of like, as a racer, as a fan of the sport, I'm like, can't we all just get along? Like, man, just somebody. But I mean, obviously everybody's got to get some of the money. You've seen that with Ultra 4. It's kind of like, you got these EROCs or, Pro Rocks and Ultra 4 and, all these
Our
little
Dirt
series.
Riot.
And it's,
Yep.
well, Dirt Riot was in there. That's right. And, it's just like, it watered the events down a little bit because people had so many options, So
It did, but what it did is, like with us, is it when I first was putting on the rock crawling events, I didn't want to be the big dog. I just wanted to be the guy that would have trailer, will travel, and I'll come put on an
right,
event in your neighborhood. If we get 20, 25 guys that are, that willing to travel half a day to get there, that's great. I wasn't looking to be, flyovers and guys parachuting in and all of the.
well, but now, man, We Rock. That's the thing. It's kind of like EROC for me was big because I was the East, but then UROC came in very hot and heavy. But then, I mean, in rock crawling, We Rock was it there for me. It was. I mean, that was like I felt for a while there. Them were the big, but that's when Pro Mod 2. I remember Wombat and those guys. I mean, it was.
Yep.
In the Pro Mod class, we had a ton of people in the Pro Mod class. So
yeah, when we dropped the regional idea and just said the hell with it, we're gonna battle, and try to go after and just put on the best event, not maybe the biggest show.
Right.
That was our philosophy.
Well, some of them turned in like
yeah.
Dayton, Tennessee, that turned into a heck of a dang show for years. And I mean,
Oh, absolutely. So. And it still is actually.
Yeah.
But the problem is that we didn't do all the things that the other guys were spending all this money on, like trying to get ESPN to come out. And,
Right.
I mean, I made deals with the guys at Lucas Oil, doing the shows that they were doing, because they would come out and do the shows for free. We didn't have to pay them.
Right.
Or we didn't have to produce it ourselves and then send them, so where they could edit it and put it together, which is basically what I think UROC was doing. But it was
and I was about to say, so I remember one event, I don't know if you were there, UROC, they had to spend a ton of money. It was called like the X-Plex. Was it in Portland somewhere?
Yes.
It was near the Axle Company. They're still around that. It was near their headquarters. I can't remember. I think it was Moser Axles.
Mosier's, yes.
And, but man, the amount of concrete. Now, that was a cool event. But I can only imagine the money somebody spent. I don't know if it was UROC or what, but it was a good event. But I don't think we went there, but maybe 1 year or 2 years. I don't remember. We didn't go there many times.
Yeah, they had teamed up with the property owner there to create that, and then they were going to do event sites like that all over the place.
Right.
And they it just didn't quite happen. There was even talk about doing an event in Hawaii, and all I could think about was, that's going to cost a fortune to get cars over there.
Get the cars over there.
I mean, it'd make a great show, but it just didn't financially make sense, at least to me, because I mean, I was doing like the teams where we were shoestringing it,
Right. Oh, well, that's me. I mean, I'm still shoestringing it back then. And all the rock crawling days, I was, thank goodness we had a tow rig and a gas card and we bought a trailer together. So I'm just, I'm going to these events. And we did build a chassis, it was like air shocks. By then everybody had like 2.5-inch air shocks. I just wanted 2-inch air shocks, but my buddy Tommy basically invented this kind of slider thing. We were still using like coil springs with a slider. And, but man, we were doing pretty good. I mean, that 1 year, for years, Wombat won everything. We weren't very far behind Wombat. I mean, we was up there in the mix a couple times. So,
yeah, Danny was Danny Rohr was a good driver.
Yeah, and then
and partier.
That's it. It was a good driver because I was about to say partying. I mean, he'd show up with a blown head gasket and be like putting pepper in it at tech inspection, and he'd just wear everybody out, I mean, he just, so.
So true.
Yep.
So then, besides the rock crawling, you got in, I know you raced Dirt Riot with us a couple of times. Was there anything else? Did you race XRRA or anything?
I did. So that's the rock crawling. I'm trying to think, rock crawling, you guys had an event at like a man-made place maybe in Ohio. It had all the tubes.
Yep, Columbus, Ohio.
Yep, there was that. We did that, and but then we had some rock crawling. Was it Hannibal, Missouri?
Yep.
But then I want to say, I'm trying to think. I think my first XRA might have been at Hannibal. I did all the XRA too. So I still was diehard Toyota. I love Toyota stuff. I mean, I tried to make it work. I had every Burfield you could imagine. I eventually put a Dana 60 in my Toyota chassis. But then XRA came around, and I still had a fuel-injected 22RE. And I did a whole season with that fuel-injected 22RE. You know, people had LSs. I mean, I've always just enjoyed traveling, hanging out with my friends. The rock crawling and racing is really just, it's a reason to go somewhere. So, I mean, I wasn't doing that well, but then I did XRA. Of course, you had to have something fast. Well, I mean, I'm still not making all that much money, but at the time, Rick Dermo had a car, and this thing was kicking everybody's butt. But it had a supercharged 3.8 in it. And so I was going to build a chassis, and I was going to use that engine. So I found a junkyard, like found an old Buick Regal, and did a bunch of research on Pirate, you know, to figure out what kind of S10 transmission I could make work for this thing. But Tommy Glenn, we built the chassis from the ground up. I had that supercharged 3.8, I had a 700 R4, had a Stack transfer case back in the day. Atlas was a little bit too much. I think Stack gave me a pretty good deal. Kind of worked a sponsor out with them, and built some 60s. And yeah, I did XRA there till it kind of faded out. So
Right. And when they faded out, that's when we looked at, there was all those cars that were built to go fast for a short period of time. And I said, okay, those guys need to be able to transition to something else. So let's start Dirt Riot. And that's when we decided to go on the road full time. And so we did we started Dirt Riot with the intent of getting people to kind of like what we did with the original days of rock crawling. And that was just to expand the sport into areas where, you know, people were having to travel and maybe only be able to afford to go out and race once or twice a year, and give them the ability to travel less and maybe be able to compete 3 or 4 times a year.
right, yeah, I remember the Dirt Riot races for sure. I was at them too. That was so after XRA for me. Ultra 4 was just starting up, but man, it was big money. Even back then, I don't know, I say big money. Back then it was like $60,000, $70,000, $80,000. And I was like, I definitely ain't got that kind of money. But there was a local series for me called, it wasn't EROC, it was ECORS. You remember them?
Oh yeah, I remember ECORS, yeah.
Rob and Ron, they did a lot of North. They were actually, Pirate 4x4 was huge, but there was actually this North Carolina 4x4 forum that was really big in the South here. And they started that series on the forum, kind of North Carolina area, the Mud Devils playground deal. It's funny, I just took a visit. It was my first time going to CT Raceworks. Alex Reed, CT Raceworks, they're super successful building UTVs.
Right. And
I've obviously got a UTV now, but I went up there, and that was the first time I've seen Alex Reed probably since back in those days when he was racing like a T-Rex, way back in the day. So it's kind of funny how all these people through all these years, I mean, I at some point in time, I've met them and raced against a lot of these people, but that series for me filled the gap for a while there, because that was before Dirt Riot.
Yes.
We did that for a little bit, but during that is when, again, my buddy Tommy Glenn was like, man, we need to build something. I was like, all right, well, I'm making a little bit of money now, maybe we'll do something. And then I set out to build an Ultra 4 car, and, with the triple bypasses and, fab housings and all that. And actually, I still stayed with the supercharged 3.8. I built this crazy, probably put more money into it than I could have LS, but, I built the car. It took like a year to build this car to go Ultra 4 racing. But then I can't remember if, I'm pretty sure my first hammers in that car was maybe 2010 is when I went out to the hammers in that car. But was then I also...
Was that before Drew's caught on fire?
Well, so that I was thinking about that before this call. So I'm going to go back to like 05, 06. Boyd, Texas, you had an event. It was maybe the
Yep,
Nationals.
absolutely.
So, so obviously, I'll talk about this. Drew built his own car. Tommy Glenn built him a Jeep Cherokee based rig, and me and him competed against each other. But at that event, Drew was competing. I was competing in Pro Mod, but Dave Cole had a Toyota.
Yes.
And I think Brian Ellinger drove it at the event. I've
Yep.
talked to Dave about this before, but I didn't really meet Dave that well, but Drew kind of got to talking to Dave at that event. And I knew who he was and everything. And me and Drew traveled together. But anyways, the start of Ultra 4 was the story is like at SEMA, Dave was basically going to everybody telling this crazy idea. And Griffin Radiators is one of the people that were like dumb enough to say, hey, that sounds great. Let me give you some money. Well, we didn't know it, and Drew didn't know it, but Griffin Radiators is 35 minutes from my house right here in Piedmont, South Carolina. So Dave Cole was thinking, well, dang, who lives in South Carolina? He's like, oh, well, Drew Goldie lives in South Carolina. So Drew actually got an invite to the OG race. But he was like, man, I can't go. My dad's not going to pay that much gas to go to California for like, this crazy guy's idea of maybe, whatever. And so, yeah, Drew didn't go to the OG race, but he went to the next race. And that's when it's funny. I think Drew borrowed, South Carolina, we didn't even know what GPS was. I think he borrowed a GPS from you.
Yeah, he did.
And his car, and his car burnt to the ground.
Yeah, he blamed the GPS.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think it wound up being, I think, a winch cable thing, maybe a battery cable on the exhaust might have melted or something. But
it was
yeah,
a
I know
joke that he was blaming the GPS.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, it was hilarious.
But I think Drew's car, I mean, you hate to be known, but it was one of the first ones to burn down. It was terrible. I mean, he lost everything in that fire. Borrowed a GPS from you, and back then they were, $400 or so. That was a lot of money. So, But yeah, so Drew kind of got the KOH thing because he knew Dave, and then obviously I started talking to Dave. But that's why I was like, oh man, I got to go to this race. So, I built the car, and then I went spectated one year. Actually, yeah, Drew was building another rig when it caught on fire. Didn't get it finished. Remember Alan Rich?
Yes.
So Alan Rich had a car, and we actually went out there with Alan Rich, I think, and raced his car instead of Drew's new car, this and that. So, but yeah. So my first KOH was actually in my XRRA car. Went out there with me and Drew went out there together, and I had the LCQ. Can't remember, maybe 2009 or something. But anyways, LCQ'd and I didn't make it. I broke an upper link and back door. Still finished the qualifier, but I think I finished 2 or 3 spots out of getting into the race.
Dang. Okay.
So it was a long way to drive out there not to race. But actually back then, it was so, not unorganized. I mean, it probably still is a little unorganized, but you just lined up and raced. Well, the night before, Dave Cole came to me and said, hey, man, you're only 2 or 3 spots out. You need to be ready to race in the morning. I was like, well, am I racing? He's like, I don't know. We won't know till 7 o'clock in the morning. Well, dang. So we got the car ready. I'm sitting there winding nets up. Never really got told I was in the race, but when everybody went off the race, the last guy went off the race, I just followed in behind him, took off and raced the race myself. I wasn't even in the race, but I was out there just racing, getting lost. We were passing checkpoints. People were waving us down. We was just having a good time. So
that's awesome. I didn't realize that. That's cool.
Oh yeah.
So then, your KOH or Ultra 4 career has taken you up and down the ladder, but you've had some success, especially the last few years. And are you going to continue doing that?
So so then I built a dedicated Ultra 4 car after that, and I started going. I had that supercharged V6, started going, but I was 4400 because back in the day there was no classes. So when they started doing classes, I was in 4400, so I just stayed in 4400. And I mean, I'm making good money, but I'm not making, let's throw $150,000, $200,000 at a race car money. And I did good in 4400, but then one year, it's kind of like Casey Gilbert was, kicking butt in the 4800 class. One year I said, man, I'm getting rid of the dual shock setup. And I remember I had Kings. I called King. I was like, hey, I need the best money can buy single shocks. Well, I had just bought a few years ago. I bought this shock package that was like, I don't know, like 12 or $13,000. But I got 8 shocks. I got bump stops, everything. I remember calling King, and these 3.0 IBPs are the new magic, whatever. Well, I basically told him, I said, look, I want to go to this 4800 class. I got a really good car. I said, I want the best you got. And I remember them shocks being, for 4 shocks, I spent probably like 10 grand on shocks. It was a lot of money, but it was kind of the first time that I ever bought something that it was like, all right, I want the best you can buy. And yeah, I put them single shocks on what was a 4400 car. And man, I gave those guys a run for the money in the 4800 class, won a couple races. And I kind of been racing so long, all them years of racing, I was kind of like, I definitely had gotten to a burnout point, but I priced my car for sale kind of high after I won a race here and there. And, a few months later, a guy called me and basically said, hey, you want to sell your car still? I was like, yeah, I was like, I'm fixing to leave to go to Crandon in a couple of weeks. Like, if you're serious, you need to give me a $5,000 deposit because I'm doing good in the championship. But, I feel like I sold the car at the right time. And, that was kind of the end of my big car Ultra 4 career. But yeah, I had a blast doing it. I mean, obviously still doing it, but.
Right. And now what classes are you racing?
So, I sold that big car and was just kind of taking some time off. But when I started building that Ultra 4 car, I had a daughter. So she's almost 11 now. Well, man, if I'm not racing, I'm still four-wheeling. I've got Jeeps, I've got 4Runners, I've got all that stuff. So we're all the time camping, four-wheeling, racing. Well, man, this kids racing started getting pretty popular around here, like racing these Razor 170s. And so I got my daughter it was a kind of a knockoff Razor 170. So I got really big into that. Still kind of am big into that. But so I started going to all these events where they were racing UTVs, kind of local to me. And, watching people race when you've been racing all those years, it was kind of hard just sitting there watching. So I bought me a Can-Am and started racing it at local stuff while my daughter was racing. But then now I'm right back into Ultra 4 with these UTVs. I built her a car from the ground up, and I built a Can-Am. I tore it down in the frame and everything. And actually me and her just went out. It was the first time my wife and daughter ever got to go to King of the Hammers was this past year. So she raced the kids race and I raced the 4900 stock class at King of the Hammers.
Awesome. So tell me about your wife and when you guys got hooked up.
Well, so, through four-wheeling, I met my wife. Like I said, I'm terrible with years. I'll tell you how I met my wife, and it'll tell you the date. Is basically I met my wife on MySpace. So,
Okay.
back in the MySpace days, she was going to a college. I was, doing the tech school thing. We met like, hey, you want to go four-wheeling? That's what we do. Like, so we're going four-wheeling, me and Drew, and, loaded my wife up in the truck, and we probably went four-wheeling. But, my wife went to a couple of events. I remember her come to Attica and this and that. She liked traveling too. And there for a while, it was funny. Right before we had my daughter, my wife was like, all right, she didn't mind me doing it, but it was like, gosh, this is too much work. Like, why do you do this? So she kind of would hang back. Well, I had my daughter 2012, and man, it was kind of like me and my daughter just go to all these events. So now it's kind of like my wife's having to come. She's like, well, if y'all are going, I gotta go. So my wife comes to all the events again, and she's starting to enjoy it, but she's like, man, this is a lot of work and a lot of time away from, work and everything. So
what are your plans for the future?
That's a really good question. So I bought this Can-Am on a whim. Just kind of a friend of mine had it. It was a kind of a beat up race car. I've raced it. My daughter is racing the kids stuff, and it's kind of short course. We go to Mid-America. That's obviously huge right now. But man, some of them kids at Mid-America, one, I hate short course racing. Like everybody, I can't stand short course racing because it's like throw a bunch of money at it, see how fast you go. Yeah, there's shock and suspension setups, but I just love the rocks. That's why I love, King of the Hammers and stuff. It's like, man, I don't care how much money you got. How many times have we seen somebody spend, buy the winning car and they suck and they just can't drive the rocks. So I definitely don't want to get into short course racing. For the kids stuff, that's kind of her next move is maybe get like a 570. But I don't want to do the short course stuff. Actually, just last week, I bought a Volkswagen. I was at an auction looking for a TIG welder, and I bought a Volkswagen. And these Class 11s are so popular, and all them years, every one of my best friends have been fabricators. I've never welded. Like, I bet I didn't weld for the first 10 years of rock crawling. Like, all my friends were welders. I never welded. But just here in the last 10 years, I've started fabricating. I built a shop out behind my house and everything. And I don't know, this Class 11 stuff kind of looks cool, and I could build the whole thing right here. So, and I've been to Baja a few times with Dave. I've kind of got that, okay, I've done all this stuff. It sure would be cool to go desert racing, not necessarily in Mexico, maybe the Mint or something, but I'm going to be racing, but I don't know what the future holds.
Awesome. And how long you've been married?
I got married in 08. I got married 6/7/08. Yep.
Okay. So then you're still working as the technician, and you're still racing, got your kid to do it. Is your wife ever going to race, or is she just going to be support?
So funny thing, I Toyotas, obviously I've had a lot of Toyotas in the day, but you get a Toyota with like triple crazy low, you can just let out the clutch and it'll do everything. Well, there was a powder puff event a long time ago, and I had this Toyota truck that it had everything you can imagine done to it. So we had probably the best rig at this little local competition, and it was a cone dodging deal. She actually won the event. I mean, it was like, she don't even know how to drive a stick. I was like, look, all you got to do is let off the clutch and follow, watch me go through the cones. So that was her only win and only time she'll ever do it. But no, my wife is not racing, not driving. She's all about going now and watching my daughter. She's all about my daughter racing, and she's very competitive. And I mean, but she ain't going to be racing. No, it's going to be me and my daughter.
Perfect. Somebody's got to keep a clear head, right?
Yeah, that's right, for sure.
So you still see Drew a lot?
Well, so not as much probably. Drew's got 3 kids. I see his kids play some flag football. My daughter actually plays flag football. I might see him at the park. We do go full wheeling every now and again. This is funny. Drew was in the Jeeps when I was in the Toyotas. He had a Cherokee. I had the Toyotas. Well, I have recently I bought a JK or whatever and been wheeling it. Well, now Drew is in the dang Land Cruisers. So it's kind of crazy. He's got these old school Land Cruisers. So I'll throw another name out there. Drew has kept in touch with Mike Hale a lot.
Right. He lives
remember
in
Mike Hale? And
yeah.
So I don't know if, Mike Hale was a Toyota nut. I don't know if Mike Hale got Drew into these Toyotas, but he's got Land Cruisers and I got Jeeps now, which I still have like this 4Runner that I've had forever. But so yeah, I do talk to Drew at least once a week probably.
Oh, good.
So
yeah, Mike Hale was probably the best driver I ever seen drive on his side.
Yeah, it just so I got to tell another funny story.
Absolutely.
How we met Mike Hale. I think we were going to Pennsylvania. That's a long haul for us. It was, I don't know, 12, 13 hours. And we didn't know it. We didn't know a whole lot of people. We're driving up, I don't know, was it 81, maybe Interstate 81. And on the side of the road, we see this contraption. It was a yellow Norfolk Southern Railroad truck, 4-door service bed, trailer behind it, but it had Mike Hale's buggy backed off. It had the back tires off the trailer. The front tires were strapped on the trailer, and it was obviously a Toyota buggy. He had the Toyota buggy in crazy double low, dumps the clutch on it. It's pushing his rig up an exit ramp. We see this. We fly by on 50 mile an hour. We're like, what did we just see? So we turned around and stopped. And yeah, Mike Hale, and I can't remember if he was by himself or had Carl with him, but they were getting that truck off the side of the interstate with the dang buggy on the trailer, half on the trailer. And we stopped and pulled them up the exit ramp and everything. And, and really that was, we just became friends that day of, we parked next to each other, always helped each other out. And man, Mike Hale could fix anything. That guy could fix anything with nothing. I mean, just nothing. So
yeah, so true. So true.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. You got any other stories about people out there you can think of?
Oh man, there's probably too many. I don't know. There's just a lot of good times. I mean, so I listened to one of your episodes and you're talking about things that have changed, or I don't know. So back in the day, some big things have changed. Like back in the day, you were cool if you stayed in a hotel,
Right.
because that's where all the fun was at. Like everyone's heard of the Jellicoe Motel, but back in the day, everybody wanted to stay at the hotel, and then it drifted into like, now you're cool if you got a toter home and you stay on site. I don't know when that transitioned, but it was kind of like, I remember getting a hotel and be like, man, where's everybody at? Oh, they're all staying in their enclosed trailers, and we had an open trailer. It's like, oh man, we got to stay at the event site. So, I mean, lots of good times at the hotels for sure with all the guys. So
Right. And that's what happened, everywhere and it doesn't matter that if it's rock crawling or racing, everybody wants to stay where everybody is at. And, the transitions from the hotels and to enclosed trailers to toter homes, to diesel pushers, God, it's just amazing where transportation has gone, semi trucks with converted trailers like what I have, and that's I wished I'd have done that day one, but it would have saved me a lot of headaches and time on the side of the road, but the it has been a big transition as transportation and lodging for all the teams.
yeah. Well, and Ultra 4, it's fun, but I've heard that people say this too. It's a business for a lot of people nowadays, so it's not near as fun at the events as it used to be, because there's so many people taking it serious, and I don't know. That's one reason I've teamed up with Team Indiana a long time ago, from really like rock crawling days. I met a few guys, and we've just transitioned. Them guys are always having a good time. So I've definitely always camped with those guys, hanging out with them, and they keep it fun. We all have a good time. We all help each other out, and it's still a really good time. So
it's one reason I quit going to KOH was it became more about, well, for me to see all my friends, I would have to go through the pits and about 30 times just to see everybody I wanted to see, because there's not like a schedule. So you can't find everybody. Everybody used to hang out at the fire, so you could see everybody at the fire at least 1 or 2 nights a week. And that just doesn't happen anymore. Like, you go by the fire now and it's, unless it's, after the big race, or after one of the big, the main races, that's the only time that people might be there. But as soon as their cars come in, they're gone.
That's right.
And if the races don't last into the dark, there's nobody there except for the people that want to hang out by the fire. And it's not the teams.
Right.
It's not the people. I mean, I walked by the fire the last time I was there, and there was probably 50, 60 people out there instead of 1,000. And there was like nobody that I knew. And I was like, okay, well, this has changed. So, but hell, I'm old. So, that's, don't take it that way.
But yeah, it's just been fun getting my daughter into it and just, keeping at it. Like I say, I don't know what's next, but I enjoy working on stuff, fabricating stuff more now than I did. So I don't know, I'll maybe build something, but I'm, at one point when I sold my car, my Ultra 4 car, I was like, oh man, I want to try IFS. I'd talk to Adam about some plans and, doing a bunch of the work myself, this and that. But, you're realistically going to have to spend like 150 grand. And it's just kind of glad I didn't go that route because I don't know, that's just been a bad financial decision, I think.
Right. I understand. I remember 10 years ago, people were financing their houses 2 or 3 times, it seemed like, just to build a car. Crazy.
Well, and that's, as long as I've been doing this, yeah, granted, I was probably never the guy, like when I show up, everybody's like, oh, that, he's the guy to beat. But that's because I was kind of, I've definitely been responsible with my money and not, refinance my house or, spend 20 or 30 grand on an engine. I mean, some people have that money. I don't, but some people don't have it and they finance it and they get burnt out real quick. So I've been around a long time because it's kind of one of those things like I stay within my means.
Right.
So,
keep it real. Yep.
Yep. And it makes it less stressful and you can have more fun.
Absolutely.
So,
well, Chris, I think we've touched all the bases, and I want to say thank you so much for spending the time and making this possible.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for calling and chatting, and it's good catching up.
Yeah, I hope to catch you somewhere, maybe at Mid-America at some point. So
yeah,
take
sure.
it easy and say hello to the family, and next time you talk to Drew, say hello for me.
All right, we'll do.
Okay, later. Thank you.
Have a good one.
Bye. Well, that's another episode of Conversations with Big Rich. I'd like to thank you all for listening. If you could do us a favor and leave us a review on any podcast service that you happen to be listening on, or send us an email or a text message or a Facebook message, and let me know any ideas that you have, or if there's anybody that you have that you think would be a great guest, please forward the contact information to me so that we can try to get them on. And always remember, live life to the fullest. Enjoying life is a must. Follow your dreams and live life with all the gusto you can. Thank you.